Hi everybody, welcome back to Library Says. My name is Jamie, and today I am going to recommend to you the 13 perfect reads for fall. Alright, so this list includes every possible genre. There's some middle grade, there's some YA, there's some adult, and there's just something about all of these that feels like fall to me, and I hope it will feel like fall to you as well. So we're just gonna dive right in. The first book on my list is A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. This is the first book in a trilogy about Diana. She is a witch who is also a professor at Oxford, and she doesn't like being a witch. She keeps her magic hidden. She doesn't actively practice. She's not part of the coven in Oxford, even though they keep trying to get her involved. And then one day, she pulls up a manuscript in the Bodleian Library that sets off a chain reaction that involves the entire magical world. So not just witches, but also vampires and demons. And she meets Matthew Clairmont, who is a vampire, a very old vampire, who is also a professor at Oxford, and they get entangled as they search for answers and, of course, fall in love. The thing that's really interesting about this series is the author, Deborah Harkness, is a professor who her area of expertise is Diana's, the history of science, which is really interesting and, of course, pulls in alchemy and sort of magical elements. And it's so well done because she knows what she's talking about. So if you love this series, I know not everybody will, but it is slow and it's so detailed and so descriptive, and it's very apparent from the beginning that an academic is writing this. So it is a romance novel and it is about witches and vampires and demons, but it's also so thoroughly researched and so developed. The world building is incredible, like next level world building. And like I said, very detailed. And there's just something fallish about it, about being at the Bodleian Library and at Oxford and future books. I'm not going to spoil anything, but they travel all over the world. And of course, it's about a vampire and a witch falling in love, and it's perfect for fall. Next up is a gothic classic that I read for the first time last fall, and I just adored it. And the Netflix movie is coming out soon, and that's Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is a classic. I think it was published in the 30s, and it's about a woman who never gets a name. Our main character is nameless, and she meets a man and marries him, a whirlwind romance, and she goes back with him to his house, his family estate, Manderley, and from there things get a little weird. She has sort of an uncomfortable tension with all of the staff of the house. She finds out that her husband's first wife, Rebecca, died under mysterious circumstances, and there's a lot of suspicion and a lot of questions and a mystery, and meanwhile the house almost feels haunted. It's a quick read, but it is so atmospheric and spooky without being scary, and the mystery is so well developed. Every reveal is so shocking and well done. It's just, I ate it up. It's a perfect fall read. And then we have The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This is my favorite novel by Neil Gaiman. I actually highly recommend you read the audiobook, listen to it, the one that is narrated by Neil Gaiman himself. He does a different voice for every character, and he is phenomenal at it. I wish he would narrate more audiobooks. But this is Neil Gaiman's take on a sort of Jungle Book-esque story, but instead of a baby raised by animals in the jungle, it's a baby raised by ghosts in a graveyard. There's all sorts of creatures. There's this found family element, and of course everything is so spooky and creeping and, again, atmospheric, and it's Neil Gaiman. But this one I really enjoyed. It is middle grade, I guess, technically, but I would recommend it to literally anyone. And like I said, the audiobook is the way to go, I think. And then I have a historical romance to recommend. It's It Happened One Autumn by Lisa Kleypas. Of course, this is sort of the obvious pick because it's about autumn and it's in the title, but this is about Lillian, who is an American, and she's new money, and she is taken to England to find an aristocratic husband. She meets Marcus, who is an aristocrat, and he is very tightly laced. He is very proper, he's very aware of his station and his duty, and marrying the new moneyed American is not in the cards for him. But they hit it off right away, and there is so much chemistry, and again, it does take place in autumn, and it's a good one. It's a solid showing from Lisa Kleypas. And then I have a short story / novella to recommend. It's called The Grown Up, and it's by Gillian Flynn. This is one that I don't think many people have read because, like I said, it's not a full-length novel, and it's another one where the audiobook was really excellent. It is about a woman who is sort of a fraudulent fortune teller, and she has a client who comes in and alludes to a stepson who may or may not be possessed or evil, and they live in a house that may or may not be haunted, and she hires our main character to come to the house and kind of see for herself and see if she can figure out what's going on. There are all sorts of twists and turns, shocking reveals, and it's very quick and very fallish and spooky, and you're never sure what's really happening, which I enjoyed so much. And then we have my favorite Agatha Christie novel. It is a classic, of course, and it is And Then There Were None. This book, if you don't already know, is about 10 strangers who are all called to an island to spend, like, I think a week. And they're all called by this mysterious benefactor, and they don't really know him in person. And they get there, and there's a terrible storm, so they are trapped in this house on an island, and their benefactor's nowhere to be found. And one of them dies, and then another, and then another, and they're being knocked off. They're being murdered one by one. And if they're the only ones on the island, it has to be one of them. It's the original locked room mystery, and it is perfect. Each of the characters is well developed, their backstories, what brought them to the island, their relationship with their mysterious benefactor, and the reveal of whodunit is so well done. Highly recommended, and again, very atmospheric, very creepy, so good. And then I have another classic. It's Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. If you haven't read Jane Eyre, you must. It is about Jane, who had a terrible childhood and as an adult takes a position as a governess in a creepy mansion where there is a man who is very grumpy, Rochester, and his ward. And she's the governess for the ward. And while she's there, the house seems haunted. The staff are super creepy, but she starts to develop feelings for Rochester. There is like the original shocking twist in this book. If you haven't already had it spoiled for you, please read it without reading anything about it. Don't get it spoiled for yourself. It is gothic, but it is beautiful, and it is romantic, and it is atmospheric, and it is sweeping and emotional, and you just love Jane so much. And for all the things that Jane goes through in this book, she never loses her sort of indomitable spirit, and she is amazing. I love Jane Eyre, and I love this novel, and it's a perfect read for fall. Then I have a thriller that I just read last month. It's Riley Sager's Home Before Dark. So if you haven't read about this one or heard about it, it is a thriller slash horror about a woman who, as a child, lived with her parents for 3 weeks in a haunted house. And they fled the house in the middle of the night, and her father wrote a book about their experiences in the house that becomes a sensation, like a bestseller. Think like the Amityville horror house slash book. And as an adult, she does not believe that it was haunted. She believes her parents lied about the whole thing, but she doesn't know the truth. And when her father dies, she finds out that he never sold the house, and she has inherited it. So she restores houses for a living, which is convenient. So she, of course, goes back to the house to restore it and get it all set up so she can sell it. While she's there, she also wants to find out the truth. And she does. And it is a wild ride, and it is scary, and it is shocking. Again, a perfect fall read if you're looking for a spooky and atmosphere and just a good time. It is so much fun in like the spookiest way. It's my only Riley Sager I've ever read, so if you think there's another one that if I liked this, I would like another one of his, please let me know in the comments. All right, next up I have a YA horror, fantasy, historical fiction, and that's The Diviners by Libba Bray. Almost everybody's already read this, but I was pretty late to the party. It is a quartet. The fourth and final book came out this year, which was very exciting for a lot of people. I actually was pretty disappointed with the rest of the series after this first book, but the first one blew my mind. It is about a group of people who all have special abilities, and they call themselves the Diviners. It is in 1920s New York City, and the historical elements are so well done. Like, I felt like I was there. I was in New York in the 20s. It's a very diverse read, which was fabulously done. The dynamic of the group is so, like, they play off each other, and they're snarky, and they have such personality, and their quips, and it is scary. There's a ghost, Dirty John, and man, like, it freaked me out. It's another one that if you're into audiobooks, the audiobook for this is phenomenal. Like, I think she should have won awards for narrating this, and maybe she did. It's such an incredible audiobook, and it just adds to the spooky and how immersed in the story you are. It's a good one. It's a perfect October read, for sure. And then I have sort of an obvious pick. It's a graphic novel, Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell. If you haven't read this, what are you doing? It's such a quick read. The illustrations are adorable and the story is adorable. It's about Deja and Josie, and every autumn through high school they have worked at this pumpkin patch / amusement park, and this is their last year before they go off to college, and it takes place on their last day of their last year working this job. And Deja sets out to get Josie to talk to the girl he's been crushing on every autumn. Meanwhile, their relationship develops. They get to know more and more about each other, and it's just so adorable. And it's a quick read, and like I said, it takes place in one day, and it just will immediately make you want to go to a pumpkin patch. In fact, basically all the staff at my library last year read this in October, and then 2 weeks later, we took a staff trip, like on a weekend. We all went to a pumpkin patch and went on a hayride and did a corn maze because we read this and we wanted to go so badly. Then I have another thriller that I just read last month, and it's The Sundown Motel. This is one of the best written parallel timelines I have ever seen. Usually with two timelines, I care about one more than the other, and that was just not the case here. So we're following one character in 1982 and one character in 2017. In 1982, Viv Delaney leaves home for New York City where she wants to be an actress, but she never makes it. Instead, she stops in a small town in upstate New York and takes a job as the night clerk at a motel called The Sundown. And she disappears and is never found, and the police never figure out what happened to her. Fast forward to 2017, Carly is Viv's niece, and her mother has recently passed away. She feels sort of lost and decides to leave college for a little bit and go to the same small town where Viv disappeared and sort of try to look for answers, uncover what happened. And when she gets there, she ends up taking the same night clerk job at the Sundown, and she meets a whole bunch of interesting characters. The motel may or may not be haunted. There may or may not be a serial killer on the loose, and nobody's telling the truth about anything. I loved this. One of my favorite books I've read in a long time. Definitely one of my favorite thrillers. It's got the horror and the thriller elements perfectly. It balances the horror and the thriller elements and the mystery elements perfectly. If you haven't given it a go, I would highly recommend it. And my final recommendation for fall reads is Night Film by Marisha Pessl. This book is about the daughter of a famous cult horror film director who dies, and her death is ruled a suicide. But a journalist doesn't believe it was a suicide and starts uncovering the truth and gets pulled into this wild, dark world of cult horror, independent cinema, kind of. And the whole book is told with scripts and photos, websites, texts, and emails, and the whole thing is so immersive, and just, I've never read anything like this book. I feel like I would have to read it like 3 or 4 times to actually get everything that was going on. It's creepy, and it's unsettling, and it's thrilling and breakneck, and it's, if you haven't read it, I would definitely recommend you give it a go. So those are my 13 recommendations for the perfect reads for fall. Hopefully you enjoy them. If you've read any of them, let me know what you thought down in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.